think is the greatest invention ever invented? Is it the light bulb, the telephone, the airplane? In this video, we're going to look at how movable metal type revolutionized the world. Most of us tend to take printed materials for granted, but imagine life today if the printing press had never been invented. We would not have books, magazines, or newspapers. Posters such as the Lion King poster here, or flyers such as Thomas Paine's Common Sense pamphlets, which sparked the common man's desire for independence here in America, would not have existed. The printing press allows us to share large amounts of information quickly and in huge numbers. In fact, it is so important that it has come to be known as one of the most important inventions of our time. During the Middle Ages in Europe, most people lived in small, isolated villages. If people traveled at all, they typically ventured only a few miles from where they were born. Could you imagine living your entire life in just your neighborhood? For most people during this time, the only source of religious and worldly information was the village Catholic priest. News passed from one person to another, often in the form of rumor. Written documents were rare and often doubted by ordinary people as forgeries. Furthermore, almost no one could read or write the language they spoke. Those few who were literate usually went on to master Latin, the universal language of scholarship, the law, and the Roman Catholic Church. Books were all hand-copied, usually by scribes who lived in the monasteries. Books were rare, expensive, and almost always written in Latin. They were so valuable that universities would often chain them to reading tables. Most people would pass their entire lifetime without ever gazing at a book, a calendar, a map, or a written work of any sort. It was during this time, around the late 1430s, a German man named Johann Gutenberg was quite desperate to find a way to make money. At the time, there was a trend in attaching small mirrors to one's hat or clothes in order to soak up healing powers when visiting holy places or icons. The mirrors themselves were not significant, but Gutenberg quickly noticed how lucrative it was to create mass amounts of cheap product. During the 1300s to 1400s, people had developed a very basic form of printing. It involved letters or images cut on blocks of wood. The blocks would then be dipped in ink and then stamped onto paper. Gutenberg already had previous experience working in a mint, and he realized he could use cut blocks within a machine. He could make the printing process a lot faster. Even better, he'd be able to reproduce text in great numbers. However, instead of using wood blocks, he used metal instead. This was known as movable type machine, since the metal block letters could be moved around to create new words and sentences. With this machine, Gutenberg made the very first printed book, which naturally was a reproduction of the Bible. Today, the Gutenberg Bible is incredibly valuable, treasured, and for its historical legacy. Gutenberg's invention made a dramatic impact when it reached the public. At first, the noble class looked down on it. To them, hand-inked books were a sign of luxury and grandeur, and it was no match for the cheaper mass-produced books. Thus, printed material were at first more popular with the lower classes, and it eventually came to have a deep and lasting impact on their private lives. Regardless of upper-class unease, the printing press exploded across Europe. As you can see, each dot in these maps represents a city which had a printing press. You can see the very first one was created by Gutenberg in the Holy Roman Empire, now Germany. Within 50 years, over 100 cities across Europe contained this new technology. Trade between cities in Europe promoted this technology dispersion. Likewise, due to a period of relative peace in the late 15th century, trade could increase and grow, and the ideas could spread all across Europe within 50 years. As you have seen, this invention quickly spread, but you may still be wondering why exactly is this invention considered one of the greatest of all times? Printed text became a new way to spread information to vast audiences quickly and inexpensively. Likewise, it increased literacy dramatically. Those who were once illiterate could purchase books now relatively inexpensive and learn how to read, a skill that was once only controlled by the clergy and extremely wealthy. It also challenged the Roman Catholic Church's authority, who until this point had the role of reading and interpreting the Bible. Likewise, people experienced increased social mobility due to increased education. It soon became clear how important literature and education could be. Academics benefited from this dispersion of scholarly ideas, and even politicians found that they could gain the public's interest through printed pamphlets. Now, common people could read the Bible for themselves and come to their own conclusions. This increased the discussion and development of new ideas. Another significant effect was the printing press was largely responsible for Latin's decline, and other regional languages became the norm in local printed material. Likewise, literacy rates soared even more, and people found they could take on new jobs with their newfound skills. The printing press certainly initiated an information revolution, similar to what the internet has done for us in recent decades. Printing could and did spread new ideas quickly and with great impact. According to the philosopher Marshall McLuhan, the printing press was responsible for the Industrial Revolution, the rise of nationalism in Europe, and the use of perspective in art. It granted the freedom for many to interpret religion and ideas for themselves for the very first time. The famous inventor Albert Einstein regards the printing press as an agent for the development of the Renaissance, the Protestant Reformation, and the rise of modern scientific thought. It can be said that our own nation was built upon the spreading and diffusion of ideas through text. How could this not be one of the greatest inventions ever created? What will the next great invention be? And what if you will be the inventor of the next great invention, which could revolutionize the world just like the printing press?